Welcome back to another crochet tutorial with Cozy Rosie UK, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my super cute table runner pattern. Now this table runner can be customized to fit any size rectangular table that you want. You can even use it to create a blanket pattern if you so wish as well. It does require a little bit of maths, but I'm going to take you through each step on how to calculate your own starting chain to get the perfect fit for your table. Now before we get started, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and of course the notification bell so you never miss out another one of my crochet patterns or tutorials again. Now I'm going to start by sharing with you what materials I'm going to be using for my table runner, and then I'm going to go into the maths. So to give you an idea of the amount of yarn that you're going to require, head on over to the link in the description box where you'll find all of that information. Now I'm going to be using some of my favourite cotton blend. Now this is from Hobbycraft, and I do have to declare to you that I have purchased some of this using my staff discount. I am a store associate and an artisan for Hobbycraft. It's not why I'm recommending this yarn to you. I've used it since before I worked there, which is why this ball has not been purchased with my staff discount. It was just in my stash. Now this yarn is marked as a DK weight yarn. I beg to differ. I find it closer to a lightweight worsted and kind of in between that DK Aran weight size. It is a blend of cotton and acrylic at a 50-50 mix, which gives it a really soft but durable feel. The recommended hook size is a 5mm, and I've never seen a DK have a 5mm hook recommended before, which is why I kind of declare it that it is an Aran weight. Now I'm using 3 different colours today. So as you can see, I have the hot pink, the white, and whatever this one is called. Oh, lilac. We could have guessed that. And the reason I have 3 colours is I'm going to be changing colour in every round. Even though it's a rectangle, we are still going to be working in the round, so it really makes the stitch patterns really stand out from one another. I am going to be using the recommended hook size, which is a 5mm crochet hook. You're going to need a darning needle and some scissors because we are changing colour in every round. And the reason that I have my tape measure here is because the next thing you need to do is go and measure the space you want to fill your table runner with. Unless you want it to be the full length of your table, you're going to need the width and the length of your finished table runner. So the table runner size that I'm making today is going to be 30 inches long and 12 inches wide. And I already know what my starting chain is because this is my favourite size of table runner to make. If you do want to transform this into a blanket, you can find the starting chain details over on my website, where you can find the written pattern and some suggested starting chains as well. I'm only going to be giving you the instructions for this size, which is a 30 by 12 inch table runner. So if you need any different stitch counts or starting chain amounts, head over to the link in the description, but I am going to give you the instructions on how to calculate your own starting chain based on the length and the width that you want your finished project to be. There is some maths calculations that you can do to formulate and work out your own starting chain length. As I've mentioned, all you need is the length and the width of the finished size of the project you want to make. So if you're looking to make a 90 by 50 blanket, that's all the information you need. You can do this in either inches or centimetres. Just remember to make a note of which measuring you're using. So for this example, I'm going to use the finished size of the table runner that I'm showing you today, which has a finished length of 30 inches with a width of 12 inches to create our rectangle. So we were going to be doing 30 minus 12 gives us a total of 18 inches for the length of our starting chain. Because of the way that the rectangles grow, we're going to be adding on width and length with each round that we make, which is why it's hard to guesstimate where your project's going to finish if I just give you a starting chain. So instead, we're going to make a chain that is long enough to be the starting length that we need. So we're doing 30 inches for the length minus 12 inches for the width, which gives us a length of our chain that we need to be 18 inches. As I said, you can calculate that on any length or width. You just need to make sure that that result that you get from taking the width away from the length is the length of your starting chain. Gather your materials and let's make our starting chain of 18 inches. We're going to start by making a slip knot and placing that onto our hook. And then we're going to make a chain for the length of 18 inches, or for the inch amount that you got from taking the width away from the length of the project you want to make. I'm going to estimate we're going to need maybe 54-ish chains. I'm going to measure when I get to that amount. So just yarn over the hook and pull through and repeat that until you have a starting chain that measures 18 inches. You will also need to note how many chains you make, because we need to check that that number is divisible by the stitch count that we need for this pattern. So make your chain that measures 18 inches and I'll meet you in a moment. So I've made my chain of 66 because 54 was not long enough, and I'm just double checking my measurement. I'm just running it down my tape measure, put it over the top, it's always a good thing. Starting with the tape measure right at the top of that last chain and pulling it down. And you can see that it gets to about 17 inches with a very gentle pull. You can see that it's just hitting 18 inches. We don't want it going over there almost naturally, because as we work into our chains, they do become a bit bigger. So I have done a starting chain of 66. Now you may notice that 54 and 66 are both divisible by 3. Because we are using stitches in this pattern that are a multiple of 3, your starting chain needs to be divisible by 3. Once we have our starting chain measuring, in our case 18 inches, or whatever your calculations worked out to be, and we know that our starting chain is divisible by 3, what we need to do is to work the first part of our first stitch cluster. So we need to work 4 extra chains. So I've got 66 plus 4, giving me a total of 70. So we just yarn over and pull through 4 more times. 2, 3 and 4. Now this chain 4 counts as our double crochet and a chain 1. We then yarn over the hook because we're going to work 1 double crochet into the 5th chain from hook. So we count down 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. There's our 5th chain. So we yarn over and we're inserting our hook into that 5th chain from hook to work our double crochet, and we've created our first V-stitch here. We're then going to skip the next 2 stitches before yarning over and working a double crochet into the next chain, a chain 1 and yarn over, ready to work a second double crochet into the same chain that you worked that first one. We skip 2, yarn over to work 1 double crochet, a chain 1 and another double crochet into that next chain. We're going to repeat this all the way down until we have just 2 chains remaining. So we skip 2, 1, 2 and work our V-stitch, which is 1 double crochet, a chain 1 followed by another double crochet. Skip 2, working our V-stitch into that next chain. So 1 double crochet, a chain 1 and another double crochet. We're going to repeat that all the way down until we have just 2 chains remaining, and I'll meet you there. So once you have just your 2 chains remaining, we're going to work our first 2 corners. We're going to skip the next chain, working into that last chain next to our slip knot, without splitting the yarn, working our V-stitch, so double crochet, chain 1 and then a second double crochet into that same chain. We then chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we work a second V-stitch into the same chain. So double crochet, chain 1 and another double crochet. We're then going to add in our next corner by making a chain of 3, and working a third V-stitch into that final chain. So double crochet, chain one, and another double crochet. We're then going to place one V-stitch. You'll notice that you've automatically rotated to work on the other side of your beginning chain. And this is what we're going to do for the remainder of round one. We're going to be working one V-stitch into the chain opposite the V-stitch on the other side of our chain. So with our corner complete, this is the next chain we need to work into. So we're going to be placing our V-stitches, so double crochet, chain one, and another double crochet into the same spaces all the way down our chain. We're skipping those two in between, for those of us who are sticklers for the written pattern. So working one V-stitch, skip two chains, and working another V-stitch into that next chain where the V-stitch was worked in the previous part of the pattern. Get that end out of the way, it becomes a little bit more apparent. So continue to repeat that all the way down, and I'll meet you for our final corners. So once we have worked all the way down, placing those V-stitches, simply need to work the last two corners into the same as our beginning chain. So for our corner, we're yarning over and inserting to work that first V-stitch. So double crochet, chain one, and another double crochet. We then create our corner with a chain of three. 1, 2, 3. We're then going to place another V-stitch into the same space, working a double crochet, a chain one, and another double crochet. We make our chain three for our next corner, and then we're going to be slip stitching to join into our beginning chain, so that we leave that last chain at the top for our chain one space. And that creates our other corner. For neatness, I'm going to fasten off by slip stitching into the next chain one space. And then I'm going to slip my yarn and just pull through to secure. So at the end of round one, you should have 48 V-stitches and 4 chain 3 spaces to make your 4 corners. Going into round 2, I'm doing my cheating way of joining my yarn the same way I do for my granny squares, just because it makes my life a lot easier and quicker. I'm going to join in any of my top corners. So I'm inserting my hook from the wrong side through to the front, and I'm simply pulling through my tail, ready to knot it to my project. Now I'm making sure that this knot will be in the far edge of the corner, because then we can go straight into round 2. I'm going to insert my hook into that corner as normal, bring it through to work a chain of 4. So that's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now this chain 4 counts as our first double crochet and our chain 1 of our first V-stitch in this corner. We're then going to work a further double crochet to complete that V-stitch, and we're going to work a chain of 3. We're then going to work a second V-stitch into this chain 3 space. So we do a double crochet, a chain 1, and another double crochet. So this creates an increase in our corner whilst helping to keep its shape. Move those tails out of the way. Oh, no, move that tail out of the way. We still need to work over this one. We're then going to work one V-stitch into each of the chain 1 spaces across. So we're working in between the V-stitch into the chain 1. You can see that my join here is where my chain 1 should be. So I'm going to work over that as we work the next V-stitch into this chain 1 space. So it's just that double crochet, a chain 1 and another double crochet. going to make sure I can neaten that up a bit. Oh, where's that tail gone? There we go. And we're going to be repeating this all the way down to our next corner. So we skip the next 2 stitches, working into that chain 1 space, placing another V-stitch. So double crochet, chain 1, and another double crochet. We're going to continue to repeat this all the way down, working our V-stitches into those chain 1 spaces, and I'm going to meet you for our next corner. So once we have worked all the way down to our next chain 3 space, we're going to work our corner into here again. So we're yarning over and working 1 V-stitch, double crochet, chain 1, and a second double crochet. We then chain 3 before we work another V-stitch into the same chain 3 space. Double crochet, chain 1, and another double crochet. We're going to work a V-stitch into that next chain 1 space. So just 1 V-stitch into that chain 1 space. Before we work into the next chain 3 space, placing that corner again. So we're working a V-stitch, so double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Then we make our chain of 3 to create our next corner before we work another V-stitch into the same chain 3 space. This creates our corners in the same space that we need them to be. So from here we're going to be working our V-stitches into those chain 1 spaces all the way back down to our next corner. So continue to work 1 V-stitch into each of your chain 1 spaces, and I'll meet you down at the end of round 1 to complete our final 2 corners. Once we have worked all the way back down to our next corner, we are going to be working our V-stitch, then a chain of 3, and then another V-stitch into that same chain 3 space. We just need to place 1 final V-stitch into the remaining chain 1 space before we join to the top of our 3rd chain to join the round. I'm going to slip stitch into my chain 1 space and across the next stitch before finally slip stitching into that next corner before fastening off. So at the end of round 2 you are going to have 56 V-stitches and still have your 4 chain 3 spaces. For round 3 we are going to be repeating round 2, so I'm going to join my next colour on and repeat round 2, and I will meet you in a moment to carry on with round 4, where we're going to be changing to a different stitch. So I've just finished my last V-stitch in round 3, adding on my 3rd colour. I'm just going to slip stitch into the corner by going into the next chain 1 space, into the top of the next stitch, and then finally into the corner, ready to fasten off. So at the end of round 3 you should now have 64 V-stitches and 4 chain 3 spaces where our corners are. Now for round 4 we are changing our stitch pattern up a little bit, setting up for a little bit more intrigue and interest in our table runner. So I'm going to attach my 3rd colour just by tying that on in the corner. No, I shouldn't. Now our corners are going to remain the same for this round and then a little bit different for round 5. So for round 5 we're going to work our chain of 4, which counts as our double crochet and our chain 1, and we're going to work our V-stitch corner as normal. So we do 1 V-stitch with our chain 4 and a double crochet. We then chain 3, work a further V-stitch into the same chain 3 space. Before we're going to mix it up a little bit. Now, I am a huge fan of any stitch that's worked in a multiple of 3, but we're going to be adding in the granny cluster, which is a 3 double crochet cluster. We're not placing it into the chain 1 spaces. We're going to skip over this chain 1 space and work in between the V-stitches. So we're going to skip the next V-stitch and work in between the V-stitches instead. So we're skipping 1 stitch, 1 chain, 1 stitch to make the V-stitch and working into the space in between that stitch and the other one. So we yarn over the hook, skipping the first V-stitch and inserting our hook into the space between the V-stitches, working 3 double crochets. And that's 1, 2, and 3. We're going to skip the next V-stitch and insert our hook in between the next 2 to work the next 3 double crochet cluster, most commonly known as a granny stitch. I'm going to repeat this all the way down to our next corner, and I'm going to meet you down there. Continue working 1 3 double crochet cluster in between each of the V-stitches, and I'll meet you to work our first corner. So once we've worked all the way down to our next chain 3 space, we're skipping that last V-stitch, and then in the corner we're working our V-stitch corner. So a double crochet, chain 1, a further double crochet, we make our chain of 3, then we make another V-stitch, so double crochet, chain 1 and a double crochet. We're then going to work a 3 double crochet cluster or a granny stitch in between each of these V-stitches. So we skip over the next V-stitch and work in between the 2 V-stitches to place our 3 double crochet cluster. That's 3. Skip the next V-stitch and work in between those 2 V-stitches, working 3 double crochets. And repeat this all the way across to our next corner, or chain 3 space should I say. 1 more to work. We skip over that last V-stitch into our chain 3 space to work our V-stitch corner. So double crochet, chain 1 and a double crochet. We do our chain of 3 to keep our corner, and then we can work our next V-stitch into the same chain 3 space. Just love how it changes the way those stitches look. So we're going to continue to work down in between each of these V-stitches. So we skip that first one, go in between the first and the second V-stitch, working our 3 double crochet clusters all the way down to our next chain 3 space. So I worked down the other side of my table runner, back to the next chain 3 space, skipping over that last V-stitch, ready to work a double crochet, a chain 1 and another double crochet. Do our chain 3 to keep that corner space before working another V-stitch into that corner. Just going to work our last few double crochet clusters in between those V-stitches. We're working those 3 double crochets all the way back to the beginning of the round. So I'm just working in between my last pair of V-stitches with my 3 double crochet cluster. All we need to do is to join to that third chain, and I'm going to of course slip stitch over into the corner by going into the chain 1, into the stitch, and finally into that chain 3 corner space, ready to fasten off. You may be thinking, my Fiona, that pink is very bold, but don't worry, we're going to be covering up some of this pink with our next colour and into our next round. So first let's do a quick stitch count check. So at the end of round 4, you should have 8 V-stitches, 4 chain 3s and 63 double crochet clusters. Our stitch is changing again, and this time for round 5 our corner is changing too. I'm just bringing through my next colour and tying that on, and then we are ready to start round 5. So for round 5 we're going to start by making a chain of 3 and working a further 2 double crochets into that same chain 3 space. The chain 3 counts as a double crochet, so this creates a 3 double crochet cluster. We're then going to make a chain of 2 and work a further 3 double crochets into the same chain 3 space. So that's 1, 2 and 3. Move those ends out of the way, and we're going to skip straight over this first V-stitch, and we're working into the space between the 3 double crochet cluster and the V-stitch. But we're going to be making a granny spike stitch, taking the spike down to the middle of the V-stitch from the previous round. So we start by yarning over the hook, we're skipping over this V-stitch and inserting into the space between the clusters, yarning over to bring a loop up, pull through 2 and pull through 2. We then make a spike stitch, so we yarn over the hook, and this time we're inserting into the middle of the V-stitch from the previous row. So we yarn over the hook and insert into the V-stitch, so not into the stitch but the space below. We yarn over and loosely bring up a loop to the height of your project, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops, yarn over and pull through the last 2. We're then going to work back into the same cluster space that we did the first part of this stitch as. So you can see that it's brought that row up. It won't be quite so severe when we're not working on it, and we're going back into the space above the spike stitch. So we've yarned over and then we're inserting our hook between those 2 rows again to complete the third part of our granny spike stitch. And it's just going to break up that bright pink colour in my case. We're going to repeat this all the way across, so I'll do the next few with us, do the next few with you. We're skipping over the 3 double crochet cluster and going into the space between. We yarn over and insert to work the first double crochet, and then we're going to work a spike into the V-stitch 1 row below. So we yarn over, insert our hook into the V-stitch, yarn over, bring a loop up, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. We're then going to work back into the space that we originally worked into to work our final double crochet to complete our stitch. That was my dog snoring, just point that out. And you can see that it's going to give us a little bit more texture, a little bit more intrigue, and it covers up some of the bolder colour that I've selected, and I just love how it looks. As I said, we're repeating this the whole way down to our corner. So we skip over the next cluster, insert our hook to work our first double crochet. We're then inserting our hook into the V-stitch, 1 row below, bring your hook up, pull through 2 and pull through 2, and then work back into the original space between the clusters where you worked your first double crochet. We're going to repeat this all the way down, and I'm going to meet you for our first corner in a few short moments. So I've worked my way down to my first chain 3 space, and we're working a 3 double crochet cluster. So 1, 2 and 3 double crochets, a chain of 2, and then a further 3 double crochets into the same chain 3 space. We're then going to continue our pattern by working in between the clusters, working a double crochet, that spike stitch into the middle of the V-stitch from the previous row, and then the next double crochet, and repeating that across to the next chain 2 space. Once we've worked across to our next chain 3 space, we simply place a further 3 double crochet cluster, do our chain of 2, and then another 3 double crochet cluster, ready to work down the other side of our table runner. We're going to repeat what we did on the other side, which is working that double crochet. So we skip over that first V-stitch, we work in between the V-stitch and the 3 double crochet cluster, working a double crochet, your spike stitch, and then a further double crochet into each cluster space across. So continue to repeat that all the way down the other side of your project, and I'll meet you for our final corner. So I've just worked my final spike stitch, and I'm working my 3 double crochet cluster into that chain 3 space, followed by a chain of 2 and a further 3 double crochet cluster, and all that's left to do is to work my spike stitches in between the last few cluster stitches before joining and fastening off. If you are finding, as I work across here, I'm going to share with you, my pattern is starting to ripple, please don't be concerned. The next round will correct any rippling that you have, and it's probably a result of the thicker stitches going into your chain 1 spaces. Just working my final 3, just working my final spike stitch, cluster or granny spike, ready to slip stitch to the top of this chain 3 this time, and I'm going to slip stitch across the next 2 stitches before reaching the corner and fastening off. So just to show you that my pattern is rippled ever so slightly, however I can make it flat, which is why there is no need to be concerned. We're finished with those 2. It's probably just the way I've worked my stitches a bit tightly for my spikes. Don't you just love how this is turning out? It's absolutely beautiful. So at the end of round 5, you should now have 64 3 double crochet or granny spike stitch. You should have 8 3 double crochet clusters and 4 chain 2 spaces. We're going to go straight into round 6. Once again, I'm just joining in this corner. Just going to secure that with a knot if I can. Apparently I can't. There we go. And we're going back to the equivalent of round 2 again. So we're going to start by making our V-stitch corner. So we make our chain of 4, 2, 3 and 4. Then we make a further double crochet into the same chain 2 space. We make our chain of 3 before working a further V-stitch into that same corner space. So double crochet, chain 1 and a double crochet. To work down the sides of these projects, we're going to be working into the top of the middle stitch of these 3 double crochet clusters. So we're yarning over, we skip 1, insert our hook to work our V-stitch. So a double crochet, chain 1 and a further double crochet. We then skip 2 stitches before working into the top of that spike stitch, ready to work a further V-stitch. Double crochet, chain 1 and a further double crochet. We're going to repeat this all the way down, working our V-stitches into the top of the stitch that's got the spike in it. So the middle stitch in our 3 double crochet clusters. You can see it a bit better there. So it's all in line as it has been before. Work that all the way down to your first corner and I will meet you there. So already you can see that that first side has straightened out with no rippling. Sometimes we've just got to have faith. Now I did work my last V-stitch into the 3 double crochet cluster, just into that middle stitch there. If you haven't, just need to work one last V-stitch into the middle of that 3 double crochet cluster, and then we are ready to work our normal V-stitch corner again. So working a V-stitch, that double crochet, chain 1 and a further double crochet all into that chain 2 space, make a chain of 3 before working another V-stitch into that same corner space. We're then going to continue to work our V-stitch into the top of that middle stitch of the next cluster. So with this one we've just skipped 1 stitch, there's our middle, and then we're skipping all the way over to here to work on top of our spike with our V-stitches. Repeat that across to the corner and I will meet you for our next corner. Again, I've worked into the top of that middle stitch of the last cluster, ready to work into my corner, working my V-stitch. Oops. A chain of 3 and another V-stitch into the same corner space. Ready to work back down the side again. So we're going to repeat that all the way down, working our V-stitch. We skip the next, work our V-stitch into that middle stitch of our next cluster, and then we're going to be working into the top of the spike stitch. So we skip 2 and then work into the next. We're then going to repeat our corner again in that last corner before making our way back around, working into those middle stitches, and I'm going to meet you at the end of round 6. So I'm just joining to the 3rd chain to finish round 6. Of course I'm slip stitching into that chain 1 across the top of the stitch and into the corner before fastening off. And this is where we stand. See how much flatter our pattern is? I knew it would be. It's the joy of maths. If, like me, you're working up a 12-inch wide table runner, we are simply going to be repeating rounds 2 to 6 again. Of course, everything is time stamped for you as always. You can head back all the way to round 2 in the chapters here. Of course, we're going to be changing colour in every row, which is going to change the order in which you work your colours this time. So I finished my round 11 and I worked that in my white colour, and I was going to show you how to add an edging on. I don't feel that this pattern needs an edging. The final round of V-stitches just looks so gorgeous that I have tried various edge stitches, and I actually feel that it takes away from the beauty of this table runner. Now I am going to give my table runner a bit of a block. The way that the stitches are worked into the middle is causing my table runner to pull in a little bit, but I think we can agree, if I move everything out of the way, that this is one exceptionally stunning pattern. If I do say so myself. I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I've certainly enjoyed showing you how to make it. I hope you're loving your table runner as much as I love mine. I will see you in the next video.